Hi, I'm here with Matthew Duvall backstage at Benaroya Hall in Seattle, and we're going to talk a little bit about the percussion instruments you're going to hear in tonight's concerts. Hi, Matthew.
Hello.
So will you tell us what you got here?
Love to. On tonight's program, there's three pieces that include percussion. The first of them is Frederick Jewski's Night, Death, and the Devil, which we'll get to in a second. That stuff is on stage ready for the first half.
Okay.
And then the second half has Stephen Hartke's Meanwhile, and then the Reich. The Reich is pretty basic. Jennifer Torrance and I just play a couple of vibraphones. So that's an easy setup. We like that. But backstage, here off stage during the first half, are some things that I use for Meanwhile by Stephen Hartke. It's a pretty fun setup. Stephen was pretty specific. He wrote the piece for 8th Blackbird, and he knew he was writing the percussion part specifically for me. So he asked me a lot of questions specifically about the instruments that I have in my personal inventory, and then he really wrote for those instruments. What he came up with was an ascending setup, and they're not specific pitches, but he wanted to start with some low log drums, followed by bongos, and then a few cowbells, some tempo blocks, some sort of standard wood blocks, and then some piccolo wood blocks. There's a second pair of bongos here that I play with my hands at one point in the piece, and then some little maracas that he
Yeah, I was
well.
wondering about those. Are those like from a toy store? Or?
They are. They're just little kids, sort of. I get them at a toy store, but they have a really sharp, articulate sound. And I had tried some other shakers and everything. He really wants me to play the part in a very outgoing manner. He really wants you to go for it, but with louder instruments that always made the dynamic too loud.
Okay.
So I use that they're quite small means I can play very loud on them, but it's not overwhelming.
Right.
And then this, I mentioned it's an ascending setup. It's kind of interesting in that one thing he's very specific about is that whatever wood blocks get chosen, and then down to tempo blocks and cowbells and log drums and so forth, he really wants the register of the pitch to be the highest on this end and the lowest at the bottom. So I really have to find tempo blocks that are more higher pitched than the cowbells.
Yeah.
And then they have to ascend. So it actually took a long time to find instruments that would do all of that. And then he, because all the instruments are quite small, he did kind of a helpful thing. In this instance, he notated it as though it were a keyboard on a treble staff.
Oh.
And that works with multi-percussion. That doesn't always work, but it does work in this case because I was able to set up the instruments in the shape of a keyboard. So the log drums don't work because of the way they're built. They don't let me. They just don't work physically. But you can imagine perhaps that this is an F, and an F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and on up to the B and the C on the top.
See, I always thought the percussionists got off easy because they didn't have to learn to read music.
Oh no. I wish no.
No, not so much.
Not the case. So when I learned the part, even though they're not actual pitches, I was learning about actually reading a treble staff.
Cool, great.
So that's kind of fun.
Well, let's head out to the stage.
Yeah, let's go on stage and we'll look at the Jewski stuff.